Mass Media.
Mixed Grounds is proud to present I Just Wanted to Push Record, celebrating arts, community, and culture. Part of the Olas Media Network.
Welcome to I Just Wanted to Push Record, a producer's podcast, where lifestyle, arts, community, culture, and production meet. Two producers, two cultures, and a whole lot of flavor. Join hosts Lina and JC for fun conversations, cool interviews, sharing tips, laughing through production hiccups, and celebrating the art of it all. Ready to roll? It all starts with pushing record.
You know, one of the funny things is, out of all the work that we do, like on a daily basis, sometimes it's easy to lose sight and keep up with like everything that you do, right? Like if you're managing 7 different shows, you know, over 2 months, you look back and you're like, wow, wait, that's 30 episodes, possibly, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with that. And sometimes like you lose track and it's like, did I miss something? Like, because the fast pace that you're going.
Yeah, or when you talk to the host of the show and you're telling them like, yeah, this is on episode 25, and they're like, episode 25, when did we do that? And you're like, yeah, like we've been doing this, you know, for 2 years.
Or even better, when you're like, well, on season 2, it's like, season 2?
Yeah.
What? Are we going to season 2? Like, yeah. It's time.
But you break it down and you start thinking about all the different things that you have to go along with the show. Like I remember when we came back and we're like, you know, in order for our shows to be successful, we've got to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Like we need to either post 5 times about one episode. We need to have a graphic. We need to have 3 types of graphic. Mm-hmm. We need to have a reel to go on Instagram. You start looking at all these elements and you can really start seeing how intricate it becomes to put together a show. And that's like when you were talking about how you got recognized by Ty and, you know, at the conference in LA, and to tell your own story. That's like, it's got to be pretty difficult, right, to talk about Libra.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting that you mentioned that, because once like the person started telling me like, wow, this is amazing how you're doing this, that's when you realize all the work mm-hmm. that you put into a show, and specifically in something that you're passionate about. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do a podcast, but then what do I need to mm-hmm. make a podcast? Mm-hmm. And then I started realizing like, okay, then I have the audio, but then how I promote it, mm-hmm. how I go from here.
And then it's got to look good.
Yeah,
right?
How I'm going to get the listeners, the community, or like whatever you intending to create with this podcast. So in my case, with the Libro Valiente, which is a podcast for kids in Spanish, it's been very interesting because it's something that I haven't seen before. People like tend just to read a story and that's it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, but what else? What we're gonna do with this? So we just tried, like, well, I say we because I work with a
you got a partner,
friend.
Right?
Yes,
yeah.
I have a partner that we both are from Colombia, and we both put into this like so much effort into this passion to create a project and to create community for Hispanic and Latinos that is going to help us, like, you know, to keep our language in Spanish, especially with kids mm-hmm. in United States. You know, how difficult it is, like a kid go to school and it's like, okay, everyone is speaking English, but then at home you got to speak Spanish. And then the parents are like, how do I keep up with that? You know, just to, I don't find the materials. Like maybe they'll find some books, but not like audios or videos like adding Latino Spanish.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You know, a lot of times when we're crafting our shows or we're working with clients, the first thing we'll say is, okay, find something that's similar to what you want to do to help us understand how you want to style it, how you want the format of the show. Like, were you able to do the same thing?
No.
Wow.
Not really. We were looking for content, like, you know, that had stories in Spanish, but then we were finding, like, you know, the Spanish from Spain, mm-hmm. or just basically like just something like a reading and that's it. Like nothing like super fun or like appealing to what we wanted to do. Like we wanted to create community, as I already said it, is like to create this part of like where kids feel they belong to something. and that they can be creative, that they can be themselves and have fun, and also imagine, this is just a space for them to be the stars.
Well, I've seen you
basically.
talk about like a refuge or a community, somewhere where they can feel accepted and not feel like they're the outcasts. You know what I mean? Like, I always think it's interesting. Like, I would have automatically thought that here in San Diego, of all places, that you'd have plenty of Latino authors that are writing books out the wazoo. But that means you had to go to like the libraries, and everything.
Definitely. So we started going to we were going to libraries for a really long time. So just to explain a little bit of our background, we both work with kids for like more than 8-9 years. And with these kids, that's how we find the necessity to create something like that. We both are passionate about books, reading, and stories. And then when we were like, okay, how are you going to teach these kids Spanish? Or how are we going to keep the ones that already know Spanish engaged in activities or something that they don't need to watch videos, or, some parents don't like screen time. So it's like, no, just put something like a podcast. So we were like, okay, we were going to the libraries. We tried to find Latino authors, Hispanic authors, and basically we didn't have good outcome from that. So we started going to events. So we were at the Latino book fair in Oceanside. And then we got to meet like different authors. And basically there are not so many. And they are struggling with the same as we are right now. And it's to find that community and that promotion on like, hey, we are out here. We want to support this community. So yeah, it's been very interesting, all the things that you had to do just to bring your project in reality, like make those dreams come true, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. You're talking about telling Latino stories. You essentially become a Latino story, but then it seems like it's the most difficult to tell that story, right? When you're talking to Ty and people are like, ooh, how in the world? And you're like, okay, well, no, this was just normal, right? Yeah. Like, you're a storyteller, but then it's hard to tell your own story. So what is your own podcast? It's got to be the exact same thing.
Definitely. I struggle a lot with that. I can help a lot of people to tell their stories, but it's hard to do it myself. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's like, if it's not because of you helping me here, just asking questions, I cannot just do it myself. How can I say?
Right. Yeah, I mean, because it's natural. I mean, it reminds me of like mi abuela, right? Like, she would be in the kitchen. I remember I loved her chicken. I loved her eggs in the morning. I can run down a list of all the things that I loved that she would cook.
Oh, yeah.
But I never saw her pull out a recipe book, right? It's just, she just knew what to do, right? And I think the same thing happens to producers a lot of times where, if you say you like it, great. It's just what we do. But if you were to tell me, okay, replicate it, you'd be like, what? Tell me, what would you do, knowing what you know now, what would you do different with Libro?
Wow, what would I do different? I'm still learning so much. We still struggle with finding good content, or we had to create our own, so which is amazing too. But what would I do different is I would have maybe find more people engaged to with the community. At this point, we started a podcast, and then later that's when we found out that we needed to go to the communities first. So that's something that I will do different. Community first, and then that we can grow all together. But it doesn't matter at this point. We're still doing it, right? And it's gonna help us to grow. But I think it will have maybe do something different to us.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard because one of the things we always talk about is, every week there's something new. There's a new vendor, there's a new tool, there's a new development. They did an update or upgrade to a tool you're already using. So it's kind of hard to stay ahead of it, right? You're usually always playing catch up. But I think after we come back, I think I've got a couple tips that I think can kind of help people to best thing to do. So let's take a quick break and then we'll come back.
Sounds good.
Just taking a quick pause here. Enjoying the convo so far? Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more fun, tips, and stories from Lina and JC.
Feeling stuck in the weekday haze? Swing by March and Ash for No Tax Tuesdays. 30% off selected brands. And for that weekend vibe, don't miss Flower Fridays. Learn more at marchandash.com. Elevate your week, fire up your weekend.
When I wrote my book, The Insider's Guide, in 2019, I set out to demystify digital fundraising. Now, in 2024, I'm giving you access to some of those insiders and the world of nonprofit fundraising through my podcast, From the Nest with me, Charity Jen. Visit olasmedia.com and subscribe to From the Nest with Charity Jen, where fundraising takes flight.
And we are on. Oh, wait. I almost forgot to push record. Now over to Lina and JC.
Well, for somebody who is difficult to tell the story, I think you've done a good job in kind of explaining, how you started, how you all started, and where you are now, and what you hope to continue to do. I think it's probably the most difficult thing for content creators to really get to a point where, okay, so what do we want to do next, right? Like, you can have 5 episodes under your belt, and you feel like, if you're any good at what you do, that you shouldn't be content, right? That you should continue to try to improve and add on and everything. But the other side of the coin is, when you do that, now it's more work. You got the same number of people, it's just you and her, but now you want to go to YouTube and you want to make sure that you're including polls, and you want to make sure that you're answering the comments. But wait a minute, you've got to make sure you post this weekend. And who's going to book, if you do have a guest, who's going to actually book that guest, and who's going to follow up? And then transcripts, are our transcripts listed right? And who's going back to do the quality check on everything that's being posted, right? And don't forget, you got to have more stories. So somebody's got to write those so that you can do more episodes, right? So it can kind of just, it compounds on a regular basis. If you had to give yourself advice and you were starting Libro Valiente all over again, what would be one tip that you'd give yourself?
I will say, okay, let's define who's the target for the promotion of the content. Yeah.
I think a part of it too, I've seen you do it. I think giving yourself, I would say, give yourself some grace, right? Like, the benefit of having your own show is that it's your show. We get stuck in the problem sometimes where we're working with the host or the sponsor, and we're like, we wouldn't do that. But they're like, do this. So I think when you create your own show, you should definitely give yourself some grace and freedom to be able to change, manipulate it so it doesn't become stressful. You got another tip?
I think another tip that I can tell myself is, like, don't be afraid to experiment some tools. Like ChatGPT, I don't know, editors, anything that is out there that actually is for free, that will help a lot too.
Yeah, I think that speaks to another tip that I would give, would be like the commitment. I think a lot of people don't understand that it's not just push and record, right? It literally is making a commitment to experiment, making a commitment that we're going to go after this audience, making a commitment to find that latest tool that helps you accomplish what it is that you want to do. Because if you're not committed, it's easily fall by the wayside, right? Like, how many times we say, yeah, we'll do that show, we'll do that episode, we'll invite that guest. It takes a level of commitment.
Definitely. And on top of that, I will say, if you have a partner, definitely know the strengths and the weakness, for working with someone else. Who's strong on what? Because that's going to be the complement that the project is going to work.
And I think the last tip that I would probably have is, if you're a storyteller, be a storyteller about you storytelling, right? Like, as this morphs and grows into something else, remember what happened.
Yeah.
Because ideally, someone's going to come ask you and say, what a great show. Oh, wow. How did you do this? The same way that it happened to you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you never know how that story, just like any other podcast episode, can impact not just the Valientes, but also other content creators behind you, in front of you. And then you just learn from your era. So I definitely would say, make sure that you know your own story.
Oh, that's super important, because it's also going back to your roots. It's like, okay, why did we do this? Why did we start this? What motivated us? So for us, was like, okay, community. We want to keep our language. So there you go. We're going back to our roots.
Yeah.
Like our language, our culture. So it's very, very important, that point.
And constant evaluation.
Yes.
Right? Like, you don't know what tools, you don't know your strengths and weaknesses, you don't know what the roots are, or if you're meeting those goals, if you're not constantly looking at it saying, all right, was that good? Like, did we do what we say we're going to do, or are we just doing a commercial show, or are we just doing a show just to have an episode? So I think that constant evaluation is a great way to do it too. Community, like you said before, I love it because I believe communities create cultures. And so, part of the reason why we created this show is to actually celebrate the community of producers, right? And, a friend you introduced to me, one of yours that you met at the conference in LA, he is actually working on his goal, and his route is to make sure that he's cultivating a community of podcasters, of women, of Latino populations that can actually grow and continue to do some of the same work that happens, as he said, on both coasts, right? In New York and LA, iHeartRadio to Spotify's, but what about all those points in between? And so I think the community is very important, and lifting up people and supporting people that are actually doing that, because I think that's a great way to learn. And so I'm honored, as I told him when we were on the chat with him, I'm honored to watch you go through this process because I learned a lot, right? Yeah. And I'm glad to see that he's recognizing you and your efforts, and that you're actually going to tell somebody about them.
Yeah, it was actually very amazing just to get a little my excitement out there. It was like, so I'm here in this conference, for podcasting, and then I met Ty, and we were talking about just different conferences, different panels that we were visiting, and then we exchanged contact information. But then something that he made me laugh with this is I just see you you're not afraid of the microphone. Every place we go, you're just talking about El Libro Valiente, and I'm like, yeah, because it's my passion, that's my project, right? Then afterwards, we communicate, and he contacted me, and he offered me to come to Arkansas for his festival. So I was beyond excited, right? And wow, definitely yes. But then what's the goal? And then it made me even more happy to hear that someone is okay, the work you're doing, I don't see it as often. I have a Hispanic and Latino community, but they are not well supported. They are not out there someone is going to come I'm doing it already, right? So that is the part that is super exciting for me, that someone is seeing us and see that the work we're doing is actually super important for the community and for our language and our culture, no matter where we are. And so I'm just waiting to see how it's going to end. But
well, I think regardless of how it ends, I can tell you how it started. It all started because you just wanted to push record.
Yes.
To hear more, visit olasmedia.com. This is I Just Wanted to Push Record. I'm JC.
And Lina.
We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening to I Just Wanted to Push Record, a producer's podcast. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To hear other episodes or read the associated blogs, visit olasmedia.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram with the handle Olas Media Studio. I Just Wanted to Push Record, a producer's podcast, is produced in studios in San Diego, California, and Tijuana, Baja, California. Olas Media is an IVC media company.
Olas Media.